The forest was alive with strange sounds. Leaves rustled in the warm wind, and alien birds chirped in haunting melodies. Sam moved cautiously, his boots crunching softly on the unfamiliar purple grass. He had been stranded on this planet for 3 days. His ship's crash had left him with only a few supplies, and the alien terrain wasn't kind to visitors. Sam tightened the straps of his backpack and glanced over his shoulder. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. The air felt heavy, as if danger was hiding just beyond the trees. He'd been hearing odd growls since the morning, low and guttural, like an animal warning its prey. Just my imagination, Sam muttered to himself, though his grip on the knife at his belt tightened. The forest had already proven itself hostile. Carnivorous plants, venomous insects, and now, whatever was making that sound. He continued forward, following the faint signal of his emergency beacon. If there was any hope of rescue, it lay in reaching higher ground where the signal might get through. But as he climbed a rocky hill, the growl returned, louder this time. It wasn't his imagination. Sam froze, his heart pounding like a drum. He scanned the forest, his eyes darting between the shadows. At first, he saw nothing. Then, a flicker of movement, a flash of dark, scaly skin, disappeared behind a tree. There was something out there, something big. Sam's instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs felt like lead. The growl came again, and this time, it was closer. His survival training kicked in. Slowly, he backed away, trying not to make sudden movements. But as he stepped onto a loose rock, it shifted under his weight, and he stumbled. That was all the creature needed. With a deafening roar, the alien predator leaped into view. It was enormous, standing on 4 muscular legs that looked like they could crush boulders. Its eyes glowed a fiery orange, and its jaws were lined with jagged teeth, perfect for tearing through flesh. A long, whip-like tail lashed behind it, smashing into a nearby tree and snapping it in half. Sam's breath caught in his throat. He didn't wait to see what it would do next. He bolted. The forest became a blur as he sprinted through the trees, his heart racing faster than his feet. Branches scratched at his arms and face, but he didn't slow down. He could hear the beast crashing through the undergrowth behind him, its heavy footfalls shaking the ground. "Think, Sam, think," he muttered, dodging a low-hanging branch. He knew he couldn't outrun it for long. His only chance was to outsmart it. But how do you outsmart a predator on its own turf? His eyes scanned the terrain, searching for anything that could give him an advantage. Up ahead, he spotted a dense thicket of thorny bushes. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Sam veered toward it, diving headfirst into the prickly maze. The thorns tore at his clothes and skin, but he gritted his teeth and pushed deeper. The predator roared in frustration as it reached the edge of the thicket. It tried to force its massive body through the bushes, but quickly pulled back, snarling as the thorns pricked its tough hide. For a moment, Sam allowed himself a flicker of hope. Maybe the beast would give up and leave. But the alien wasn't giving up that easily. It began circling the thicket, its glowing eyes never leaving Sam. He crouched low, trying to stay out of sight, but the creature's snarls told him it knew exactly where he was. Sam's breathing was shallow, and his mind raced. He needed a plan. He rummaged through his backpack, pulling out a small flare gun. It wasn't meant for defense, but it was better than nothing. His fingers trembled as he loaded the flare. One shot. That's all he had. The creature stopped circling and let out a low growl. Then, to Sam's horror, it began pushing its way into the thicket, ignoring the thorns. It was determined, and Sam was running out of time. "Come on, you ugly thing," Sam muttered, gripping the flare gun tightly. "Let's see how you like fire." As the beast broke through the final layer of bushes, Sam stood up and fired. The flare shot out in a burst of red light, striking the creature's chest. It let out an ear-splitting roar, staggering backward as the flare burned into its scales. For a moment, it seemed to hesitate, its fiery eyes flickering with something like fear. Sam didn't wait to see what would happen next. He bolted out of the thicket, sprinting toward a rocky outcrop in the distance. Behind him, the creature roared again, but this time, it didn't follow. As he reached the outcrop, Sam collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. He looked back at the forest. The beast was gone, but he knew it wasn't over. It had tasted the chase, and it would be back. For now, Sam had survived. But the question remained, how long could he keep running from a predator that never gave up? Cornered by the unknown, Sam's legs burned as he sprinted up the rocky slope, his heart pounding in his chest. The predator's roars echoed through the forest behind him, a constant reminder that it wasn't far. Every instinct screamed at him to keep running, but he knew his body couldn't keep up much longer. He was only human after all. As he reached the top of the slope, he spotted a narrow crevice in the rock face ahead. It wasn't much, but it was deep enough to hide in, if he could squeeze inside. Without hesitation, Sam dashed toward it, throwing himself into the gap. The rough edges of the rock scraped his arms and shoulders, but he forced himself deeper until he was completely out of sight. Breathing heavily, he pressed his back against the cold stone and listened. The forest had fallen eerily silent. For a moment, he thought the creature might have given up, but then he heard it. A low growl, so close it made his skin crawl. The alien predator had found him. Its massive shadow loomed over the entrance to the crevice. Sam could see its glowing orange eyes peering in, scanning for movement. It sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring as it caught his scent. Sam held his breath, his hand clutching the knife at his belt. He knew the blade was useless against something that big, but it was better than nothing. The creature let out a frustrated snarl and began clawing at the entrance. Its sharp talons scraped against the rock, sending shards flying in every direction. Sam clenched his jaw, his mind racing for a plan. He couldn't stay hidden forever. The creature was too persistent. But if he made a move, it would be on him in an instant. "Think, Sam, think," he whispered under his breath. He looked around the crevice, searching for anything he could use. His eyes landed on a loose rock, about the size of his head, lying near his feet. It wasn't much, but it might buy him some time. Carefully, he picked it up, his muscles tensing as he prepared to act. The creature's growls grew louder, and its claws dug deeper into the rock. It was close to breaking through. Sam waited until its head was partially inside the crevice, then swung the rock with all his strength. The impact landed squarely on its snout, and the creature let out a deafening roar of pain. It stumbled back, shaking its head violently. Seizing the opportunity, Sam scrambled out of the crevice and bolted down the other side of the slope. His legs felt like they might give out at any moment, but adrenaline kept him moving. Behind him, the creature recovered quickly, its roars growing more furious. It was angrier than ever, and now it was chasing with renewed determination. Sam's mind raced. He couldn't outrun it, not for long. He needed to find higher ground or a defensible position. Up ahead, he spotted a cluster of large boulders forming a natural barricade. If he could reach it, he might be able to hold the creature off, at least temporarily. He pushed himself harder, his lungs burning with every breath. The predator was gaining on him, its massive body crashing through the undergrowth. He could feel the ground tremble beneath its weight. Just a little further, he told himself. Just a few more steps. Finally, he reached the boulders and scrambled onto the largest one. It was about 10 feet off the ground, high enough to give him some advantage. He turned to face the creature, gripping his knife tightly. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. If this was the end, he wasn't going down without a fight. The predator slowed as it approached the boulders, its fiery eyes locked on Sam. It let out a low, rumbling growl, as if taunting him. Sam held his ground, trying to appear braver than he felt. The creature circled the base of the boulder, searching for a way up. Its claws scraped against the rock, testing its surface. Sam's mind raced again. He needed to distract it, to find a way to make it lose interest. But how? The flare gun had bought him time earlier, but he was out of flares. His rations were nearly gone, and nothing in his pack seemed useful against something this powerful. Then, an idea struck him. The creature wasn't acting like a mindless predator. Its movements were deliberate, almost calculated. It hadn't killed him when it had the chance. Instead, it had been stalking him, testing him. What if it wasn't hunting for food? What if it was after something else? Sam reached into his pack and pulled out the last of his water. He opened the bottle and poured a small amount onto the rock, letting it drip down the side. The predator paused, its eyes narrowing as it watched the liquid glisten in the sunlight. It sniffed the air, its growl softening slightly. Sam's heart raced. He didn't know if his plan would work, but it was his only chance. Slowly, he poured the rest of the water onto the ground, hoping to distract the creature long enough to escape. To his surprise, the predator didn't attack. Instead, it crouched low, its eyes fixed on the water. For the first time, Sam saw something other than hunger in its gaze. Curiosity. It let out a low, almost hesitant growl, as if trying to communicate. Sam didn't wait to find out what it wanted. While the creature was distracted, he slipped off the boulder and disappeared into the forest once more. But as he ran, a thought nagged at him. What was this thing really after? Hunger of the heart. Sam's feet pounded against the soft, alien ground as he fled deeper into the dense forest. The chase had stopped, but the creature's presence lingered in his mind like a dark shadow. He couldn't shake the image of its glowing orange eyes or the unsettling intelligence behind them. This wasn't an ordinary predator. It was something more. By midday, exhaustion forced Sam to stop. He leaned against a tree with bark that shimmered like metal, catching his breath. The adrenaline that had fueled him earlier was gone, replaced by an aching weariness. His stomach growled, reminding him he hadn't eaten since dawn. Digging into his backpack, he pulled out a protein bar, unwrapped it, and took a bite. The moment he did, a faint rustle came from the bushes nearby. Sam froze, his hand instinctively moving to his knife. The rustling grew louder, and his heart raced. Was it the creature again? Slowly, he turned his head toward the noise. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at him. Sam's pulse quickened, but the creature didn't move. It stayed partially hidden in the shadows, its massive body blending with the forest. This time, there was no roaring, no sudden charge. It simply watched him, its head tilting slightly as if studying his every move. Sam's grip on his knife tightened, but a strange thought stopped him from drawing it. If the creature wanted to attack, it could have done so already. Why was it just watching? He decided to test something. With careful movements, he broke off a piece of the protein bar and held it out. The creature's eyes narrowed, and it took a cautious step forward. Sam's heart pounded in his chest, but he stayed still, his hand extended. The alien predator sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring. After a moment, it let out a low, guttural growl, not aggressive, but almost uncertain. Then, to Sam's surprise, it stepped back, retreating into the shadows. What the hell? Sam muttered to himself, lowering his hand. The creature had refused the food, yet it hadn't attacked. What did it want? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Sam decided to keep moving. He needed to put distance between himself and the predator, even if it seemed more curious than hostile. But no matter how far he went, he couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every so often, he caught glimpses of it, just beyond the edge of his vision, always staying out of reach. By nightfall, Sam found a small clearing near a stream and decided to make camp. He gathered some dry branches and started a fire, the flickering flames casting long shadows around him. The warmth was comforting, but it didn't ease the unease in his chest. He knew the creature was still out there, watching. As he ate the last of his rations, a soft rustling came from the edge of the clearing. Sam's muscles tensed, but he didn't reach for his knife this time. Instead, he grabbed a small chunk of bread from his pack and tossed it toward the sound. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature emerged from the shadows. It moved cautiously, its glowing eyes fixed on Sam. This was the closest he'd seen it in the light, and it was even more terrifying up close. Its body was covered in dark, leathery scales that shimmered faintly in the firelight. Its claws were sharp enough to shred metal, and its long tail swayed slowly behind it. But its eyes were different. They weren't filled with rage or hunger. They held something else. Curiosity. Sadness. Sam couldn't tell. The creature stopped a few feet from the bread and sniffed it. Then, much to Sam's surprise, it picked up the chunk in its massive jaws and ate it. For a moment, the two of them just stared at each other, the crackling fire the only sound in the clearing. "You could have killed me a dozen times by now," Sam said softly, more to himself than the creature. "So why haven't you?" The alien tilted its head again, as if trying to understand his words. Then it let out a low, rumbling sound, a growl that wasn't aggressive but almost mournful. Sam frowned, his mind racing. Was it possible the creature wasn't hunting him for food? Could it be looking for something else? The thought seemed absurd, but the more he watched the creature, the more he believed it. It wasn't acting like a mindless predator. Its movements were deliberate, its growls carefully controlled. It was studying him, testing him, waiting for something. As the fire burned lower, the creature took a step back, retreating into the shadows once more. Sam didn't try to stop it. He sat by the dying flames, staring into the darkness where it had disappeared. "What are you after?" he whispered into the night. Sleep didn't come easily, and when it did, his dreams were filled with those glowing orange eyes. Somewhere deep in the forest, the creature rested too, its mind swirling with thoughts no human could understand. Neither of them realized it yet, but their strange connection had only just begun. A fragile understanding. The morning brought no relief for Sam. His body ached from the relentless running and his restless sleep on the forest floor. The fire he had relied on for warmth was now a pile of cold ashes, and the eerie silence of the alien forest pressed down on him like a weight. But the creature, as far as he could tell, was gone. For the first time in days, Sam allowed himself to breathe a little easier. He drank the last of his water from the stream and stood, scanning the horizon. The alien landscape stretched out in all directions, its strange purple foliage and towering crystalline trees unlike anything on Earth. His emergency beacon still blinked faintly, signaling for help that hadn't yet come. He couldn't stay here forever, but every step forward felt like walking into another trap. And then there was the creature. What was it? A predator. A guardian of this strange place, or something more complicated. As he moved cautiously through the forest, Sam couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He didn't see the creature, but its presence lingered like a shadow just beyond his sight. It wasn't until mid-afternoon, when he stopped to rest near a massive, glowing mushroom, that he realized he wasn't alone. The creature emerged silently from the trees, its glowing orange eyes fixed on him. This time, there was no growl, no threatening display of its claws. It moved slowly, deliberately, stopping several feet away. Sam's instincts screamed at him to run, but he forced himself to stay still. "You again," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the fear gripping him. "What do you want?" The creature tilted its head, an almost human-like gesture of curiosity. It sat on its haunches, its massive tail curling around its legs. Sam noticed that it wasn't looking at him. It was staring at the empty water bottle in his hand. "You're thirsty?" he asked, unsure if it could understand him. He decided to test a theory. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a collapsible cup. Walking slowly to the stream, he filled it with water, then placed it on the ground a few feet from where the creature sat. Backing away, he washed carefully. The alien sniffed the air and took a cautious step forward. It lowered its head and lapped at the water, its movements slow and deliberate. When it was done, it looked up at Sam, its glowing eyes softer than before. For the first time, Sam felt something other than fear in its presence. It wasn't just a hunter. It was something more. "Not so scary now, are you?" Sam muttered, sitting down on a fallen log. The creature made no move to approach him further, but didn't retreat either. Instead, it seemed content to stay where it was, watching him with those unblinking eyes. Over the next few hours, an unspoken truce formed between them. Sam went about his tasks, cleaning his knife, patching a tear in his jacket, and scanning the horizon for signs of rescue. The creature stayed nearby, observing him with what seemed like intense curiosity. It mimicked small gestures, tilting its head when Sam did, sniffing the air when he looked up at the sky. It wasn't threatening him anymore. It was trying to understand him. As night fell, Sam decided to build another fire. He wasn't sure if the creature would stay, but part of him hoped it would. Despite its terrifying appearance, it felt less like an enemy and more like an unlikely companion in this hostile world. While the fire crackled, Sam opened his backpack to take inventory of his remaining supplies. He had one protein bar left and no water. His stomach growled, but he ignored it, breaking the bar in half. He tossed one piece toward the creature, which sniffed it cautiously before taking it in its massive jaws. "So, you eat food too," Sam said with a small smile. "Good to know." The alien growled softly, a sound that no longer felt like a threat. It almost sounded appreciative. Sam chuckled, shaking his head. "You're full of surprises, you know that." For the first time, the tension between them seemed to ease. The creature lay down near the edge of the firelight, its glowing eyes watching Sam intently. It was still dangerous, but in this moment, it felt less like a predator and more like a lost soul, alone, just like him. "Why are you following me?" Sam asked softly, not expecting an answer. "You're not hunting me anymore, are you?" The creature tilted its head again, almost as if it understood. Sam leaned back, staring up at the alien sky. The stars here were different, bright and unfamiliar, scattered across the heavens in strange patterns. Somewhere out there, he hoped, a rescue team was on its way. As he drifted into an uneasy sleep, the creature stayed where it was, its tail curling around its body. It watched over Sam like a silent guardian, its own motives as mysterious as the forest itself. Whatever hunger it had chased him for, it seemed to be satisfied by something else entirely. The true hunger revealed. The next morning, Sam awoke to the faint light of the alien sun filtering through the trees. The fire had burned out during the night, leaving only a pile of smoldering embers. He stretched, wincing as his muscles protested after days of running and restless sleep. For a brief moment, he almost forgot where he was, until he saw the creature. It was still there, lying a short distance away, its glowing orange eyes fixed on him. It hadn't moved all night, or if it had done so silently. Sam shivered, unsure whether he should feel comforted or unnerved by its constant presence. "Still here, huh?" he said, his voice groggy. The creature tilted its head slightly, a gesture Sam was beginning to recognize as curiosity. Sam sat up and rummaged through his pack. His supplies were nearly gone, just a single protein bar and his empty water bottle. He glanced at the stream nearby, debating whether he should refill the bottle now or try to move to a more defensible location first. The creature watched his every movement, its unblinking eyes making him feel as if he were being judged. "All right, buddy," Sam said, breaking the silence. "If you're going to stick around, maybe it's time we figured each other out." He pulled out the protein bar, broke off a piece, and tossed it toward the creature. It sniffed the offering, then ate it with deliberate slowness. Sam noticed something strange. The way it ate wasn't ravenous or animalistic. It was careful, almost restrained, as though it were trying not to scare him. Sam decided to take a risk. "You're not just a predator, are you?" he asked, more to himself than the creature. "There's something else going on here." The creature didn't respond, of course, but its body language shifted. It sat up slightly, its massive frame almost seeming to shrink as it curled its tail around itself. It made a low guttural sound. Not a growl this time, but something softer, almost mournful. Sam frowned. He wasn't sure what he expected, but this reaction surprised him. It was almost as if the creature was trying to communicate. He thought back to the night before, to the way it had mirrored his gestures and accepted his food. It wasn't acting like a typical predator. It was something more complicated. An idea struck him. What if it was lonely? Could an alien creature, as terrifying and powerful as it seemed, experience loneliness? The thought felt absurd, but the more he watched its behavior, the more it made sense. It had been chasing him, but not to kill him. Instead, it had stayed near him, followed him, observed him. It had protected him from the other dangers of the forest without ever attacking him directly. Sam stood slowly, careful not to startle the creature. He picked up a stick and drew a simple shape in the dirt, a circle with a smaller dot inside it, representing the alien sun and this planet. The creature's head tilted again, and it let out another low sound, as if it recognized what he was doing. "Okay," Sam said, drawing a second circle, this one representing Earth. He pointed to himself, then to the drawing of Earth. "That's me. Human. Earth." The creature's glowing eyes shifted from him to the drawing, then back again. It raised one of its massive claws, and to Sam's astonishment, made a mark in the dirt. The line was rough and uneven, but it was deliberate. Sam stared at it, his heart racing. Was this creature intelligent? Was it trying to communicate? Before he could react further, a loud noise shattered the moment. It was a deep mechanical hum, growing louder by the second. Sam's head snapped toward the sky, where a small, sleek craft was descending through the clouds. His emergency beacon had finally worked. Help had arrived. The creature stood immediately, its body tense and alert. Its glowing eyes flickered with something Sam couldn't quite place. Fear. Anger. It let out a low, rumbling growl and began backing away toward the trees. "Wait," Sam shouted, taking a step forward. "They're here to help me. They won't hurt you." The creature hesitated, its claws digging into the ground. It looked at Sam, then at the approaching craft, then back at him. For the first time, its posture wasn't one of a hunter or a guardian. It was one of uncertainty, even vulnerability. As the craft landed in the clearing, a group of armored figures emerged, their weapons drawn. They were clearly here for a rescue mission, but their stance suggested they were ready for a fight. "Stand down," one of them shouted, their voice amplified through a helmet. "We're here to extract you." Sam raised his hands in the air. "It's okay. I'm coming with you, but don't hurt it. It's not a threat." The team hesitated, their weapons still trained on the creature. The alien, sensing the danger, let out a deafening roar and began retreating into the forest. Sam felt a pang of guilt as he watched it disappear into the shadows. It wasn't running from him, it was running from them. As the rescue team ushered him onto the craft, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving something important behind. The creature hadn't been chasing him out of hunger. It had been searching for something deeper: connection, understanding, maybe even companionship. And as the craft ascended into the sky, Sam couldn't help but wonder, had he been the answer to its hunger all along? A bond beyond species. As the rescue craft ascended through the alien atmosphere, Sam sat in silence, his mind racing. The armored crew around him buzzed with activity, checking his vitals, securing their weapons, and reporting back to the mothership. But Sam's thoughts weren't on the safety he was being delivered to. They were on the creature he had left behind. He glanced out of the window at the dense forest below, its purple canopy hiding the figure that had been both his pursuer and his protector. The creature had risked nothing to harm him, and in the end, had only sought something more profound: companionship, understanding. Sam didn't know for sure, but he felt a pang of regret for leaving it behind. The commander of the rescue team, a tall woman with sharp features and a no-nonsense demeanor, approached him. "You're lucky we found you," she said, We picked up faint signals from your emergency beacon yesterday, but the interference from the planet made it nearly impossible to lock onto your location." "Yeah," Sam replied absent-mindedly, still staring out the window. "What happened down there?" the commander asked. "Our scans showed signs of a massive life form nearby. Were you being hunted?" Sam hesitated. He could tell them the truth, that the creature wasn't just a mindless predator. But would they believe him? Worse, would they go back to the surface to hunt it down, thinking it was a threat? He decided to be cautious. "It was complicated," he said. "I managed to avoid it. Barely." The commander raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further. "Well, it's good you survived. Most people wouldn't have lasted 3 days on that planet. It's one of the more dangerous ones in this sector." Sam nodded, but the conversation only deepened the knot in his chest. He couldn't stop replaying the creature's final moments in his mind. The way it had backed away, its glowing eyes flickering with something almost human. He had seen fear, sadness, and most of all, trust. The ship docked with the larger mothership, and Sam was escorted to the medical bay. The sterile white walls and hum of machinery were a stark contrast to the wild, vibrant forest he had just left behind. As the medics examined him, he barely noticed their questions and instructions. His thoughts were elsewhere. Later, as he sat in a small, windowless room waiting for a debrief, Sam made a decision. He couldn't leave things the way they were. The creature had spared him when it could have easily killed him. It had watched over him, even mimicked his actions, and tried to communicate in its own way. He owed it more than just walking away. When the commander returned for the debrief, Sam spoke before she could start. "I need to go back." The commander frowned. "Excuse me?" "I need to go back to the surface," Sam repeated. "There's something down there, something important." "Are you out of your mind?" she said. "That planet is classified as hostile. We barely got you out alive. Why would you want to go back?" Sam took a deep breath. "Because it's not just a hostile planet. There's a creature down there, and it's different. It's not just a predator. It's intelligent. It was trying to communicate with me." The commander stared at him, her expression skeptical. "You expect me to believe that the same creature that was chasing you is intelligent and wants to communicate?" "I know how it sounds," Sam said, his voice steady. "But I'm telling you the truth. It wasn't chasing me to kill me. It was lonely, and I think it was trying to connect with me." The commander sighed and rubbed her temples. "Even if what you're saying is true, we can't just go back. That planet is dangerous, and there's no guarantee you'll survive another encounter with it." "I survived 3 days," Sam countered. "And I think I survived because of it. It didn't attack me when it had the chance. It saved me from other dangers. It watched over me. Please, I need to go back." The commander studied him for a long moment. "Finally," she said, "even if I approve this, and I'm not saying I will, you'd need a good reason to justify the risk. What are you hoping to accomplish?" Sam met her gaze. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I can't leave things the way they are. If this creature really is intelligent, if it really is capable of understanding and connection, then we owe it more than just leaving it behind. It's not just a monster. It's something extraordinary." The commander sighed again, clearly conflicted. "I'll need to talk to my superiors," she said. "Don't get your hopes up." Sam nodded, but inside, he felt a spark of determination. Whether or not the commander approved his return, he knew he couldn't let this go. The creature had reached out to him in its own way, and he wasn't going to abandon it now. As he lay in the bunk that night, staring at the ceiling, he thought of the creature's glowing eyes and the unspoken bond they had shared. It wasn't hunger for food that had driven it to chase him. It was hunger for something deeper, something Sam now felt as well. Whatever it took, he was going back. Satisfying the hunger. The alien sun had just begun to rise when Sam stepped off the landing ramp, his boots sinking into the familiar purple grass. The air smelled the same, rich with the scent of alien flora and faintly metallic from the minerals in the soil. It was strange to feel relief upon returning to the place where he had almost died, but here he was willingly descending into the forest again. The commander had reluctantly approved his return, but under strict conditions. He was outfitted with a tracking device and accompanied by 2 heavily armed members of the rescue team. They were under orders to observe from a safe distance, ready to extract him at the first sign of danger. "Remember," the commander's voice crackled in his earpiece, "you're on a tight leash. If this thing shows any signs of aggression, we're pulling you out immediately." Sam nodded, though he knew the creature wasn't going to attack. It hadn't harmed him before, and he believed it wouldn't now. As he moved deeper into the forest, the soldiers hung back, their presence a constant reminder of the precariousness of this mission. The forest was as he remembered, silent and alive all at once. Every rustle of leaves or distant chirp of alien birds made his pulse quicken. He scanned the trees, searching for the familiar orange glow of the creature's eyes. Hours passed, and the soldiers grew restless. "Are you sure it's even still here?" one of them asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. "It's here," Sam replied confidently. He didn't know how he knew, but he could feel it, a presence just beyond the edge of his awareness. It was watching, waiting. Finally, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, he found it, or rather, it found him. The creature emerged silently from the shadows, its massive form almost blending into the forest. Its glowing orange eyes locked onto Sam, and for a moment, neither of them moved. The soldiers behind him tensed, their weapons ready, but Sam raised a hand to stop them. "Stand down," he said firmly. "It's not a threat." The creature took a cautious step forward, its tail swaying slowly behind it. Sam noticed the subtle change in its posture. It wasn't stalking him. It was approaching carefully, almost hesitantly. He stepped forward as well, closing the distance between them. "Hey," he said softly, his voice calm and steady. "I'm back." The creature let out a low, rumbling sound, somewhere between a growl and a purr. Its eyes softened, and Sam felt an inexplicable sense of relief. He reached into his pack and pulled out a canteen of water, pouring some onto the ground in front of it. The creature leaned down, lapping up the liquid with a deliberate grace. "I knew you weren't just chasing me," Sam said. "You're not just a predator, are you? You're something else." The creature tilted its head, its glowing eyes filled with an intelligence that seemed almost human. Then, to Sam's astonishment, it raised one of its massive claws and drew a line in the dirt. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, a gesture of communication. Sam knelt beside it, his heart pounding. He picked up a stick and drew another shape next to the line, a circle representing Earth. The creature made a low sound, almost like a hum, and added another line to the dirt. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They were communicating. Behind him, the soldiers muttered nervously, but Sam ignored them. This moment wasn't for them. It was for him and the creature. For the first time, he understood what it had been chasing all along. It wasn't hunger for food. It was hunger for connection, for understanding. Sam slowly extended his hand, palm up, toward the creature. It hesitated, its glowing eyes flickering with uncertainty. Then, cautiously, it lowered its head and pressed its snout against his palm. The touch was warm, the leathery texture of its skin rough yet strangely gentle. A rush of emotion flooded through Sam. Fear, relief, awe, and something deeper. This was no monster. This was a being capable of thought, of feeling, of trust. And somehow, against all odds, it had chosen him. Behind him, the soldiers lowered their weapons, their expressions a mix of confusion and amazement. Even the commander, watching through the live feed, was silent. Sam spent hours with the creature, sharing water, gestures, and the simple presence of companionship. When it finally retreated into the forest, it did so not as a predator, but as an equal, Sam watched it disappear into the shadows, a bittersweet ache in his chest. The soldiers escorted him back to the landing craft, their earlier skepticism replaced by quiet respect. As the craft ascended into the sky, Sam looked out the window one last time, searching the forest below. He couldn't see the creature, but he knew it was watching. Back on the mothership, the commander met him with a nod. "I don't know what just happened down there," she said, "but it changes everything." Sam smiled faintly. "It wasn't just a chase," he said. "It was a beginning." And as he stared out at the vast expanse of stars, he knew this wasn't the end. The creature had taught him something profound, that even in the most unlikely places, connection was possible. Hunger didn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it was the need to be understood. And for both Sam and the creature, that hunger had finally been satisfied.